of the commission meetings so that
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should know by the day of who we have attending or not attending.
We are now live on the live stream.
thank you. I will start the meeting in 2 minutes.
Sorry, but I'm trying to find the meeting itself.
It's 1 p.m. I will now start the meeting.
Wishful thinking.
Commissioner Thomas, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to the November 8th, 2022 regular meeting of the Community Development Commission of Chicago. I am Gwendolyn Hatton Butler, Chair of the CDC and host of today's virtual meeting. I will now call to order the November 8th meeting of the Community Development Commission with a call of the roll. On October 14th, 2022, Governor Pritzker renewed his executive order proclaiming that all counties in the state of Illinois as a disaster area. Section 7 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act allows the CDC, along with other city boards and commissions, to host virtual meetings during this COVID-19 public health emergency, provided that certain conditions are met. One of those conditions is that the chair of this commission determines that an in-person meeting on the scheduled meeting date would not be practical or prudent. To ensure that today's virtual meeting meets all conditions of the Open Meetings Act, I am hereby making the determination pursuant to Section 7E2 of the Act that due to the COVID-19 public health emergency, an in-person meeting would not have been practical or prudent today. Therefore, in accordance with the Commission's emergency rules, this meeting is being held virtually on Zoom and can be viewed live via the Commission's website. A court reporter is present today to record the proceedings. Commissioners, you have all been designated as panelists, which allows you to control your microphone. Please remember to place your microphone on mute unless you wish to speak. If you would like to be recognized by the chair, please activate the raise your hand feature and you will be called in order. The agenda for today's meeting was posted on November 2nd, both online at the CDC's website and physically in City Hall. Before I formally call the roll, I'd like to make the members of the commission and the public aware that Commissioner Adela Cepeda resigned from the Community Development Commission on October 21st, 2022, after a decade of service to the city. We'd like to thank her publicly for her work on behalf of the city of Chicago. I will now begin the meeting with a call of the roll. Commissioners, when your name is called, please turn your microphone on, respond by saying present, and please also indicate that you can hear me. Vice Chair Newsom, Secretary Wheat.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Buford.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Chan McKibben. Commissioner Cox.
Present, I can hear you.
Commissioner Curtis.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Gomez. Commissioner Griggs.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Thomas.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Trevino. And Chair Butler is present. We have a quorum. The first item on our agenda requests approval of the minutes from our previous meeting held on October 11th, 2022. The commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes, and if there are no corrections, I am looking for a motion to approve. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
So moved by Commissioner Thomas. Do I have a second?
Seconded by Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Commissioners, if you were not in attendance during the October meeting, please abstain from this vote. Vice Chair Newsom. Secretary Wheat.
Yes.
Commissioner Buford.
Yes.
Commissioner Chan McKibben. Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis.
Abstain.
Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino. And Chair Butler votes yes, the motion passes.
Commissioner Davis is here. I just wasn't enabled.
All right, thank you so much, Commissioner Davis. And would you care to vote on the approval of the minutes?
Yes, approved.
Thank you. The public was given an opportunity to provide written comments up to 24 hours prior to the start of this meeting through the CDC email address, which is cdc@cityofchicago.org. There were no written comments in the CDC mailbox for today's meeting.
That's
And
right.
Bob, I'm looking at you to confirm that is correct.
That is correct.
Thank you.
There were no items within 24 hours before the meeting.
Thank you. Commissioners, today's agenda will begin with 3 items of old business, which will cause us to recess from our regular CDC meeting in order to hold the 3 required public hearings in order to amend the 3 existing TIF plans on the agenda. Specifically, Ryan Slattery from the Department of Planning and Development will be requesting approval of 3 proposed redevelopment plans. For the first for the proposed 43rd Cottage Grove TIF, Amendment Number 3. The second for the proposed Bronzeville TIF, Amendment Number 6. And the third for the proposed Matten Wells TIF, Amendment Number 1. To that end, the CDC will be accepting public comments at the appropriate time during each of the hearings. So we will now recess from the regular meeting of the Community Development Commission in order to hold the first of the public hearings, this one on the matter of the proposed 43rd Cottage Grove Area TIF Redevelopment Project Area Amendment Number 3, and to recommend or oppose adoption of Amendment Number 3 for the area. Ryan Slattery will present the staff report on behalf of the Department of Planning and Development. Ryan, you may begin.
Great, thank you so much. So let me get it. Good afternoon, Chair Butler and CDC Commissioners. For record, my name is Ryan Slattery. I'm the Financial Planning Analyst for the Department of Planning and Development. I'm here today with Tim Jeffries, Deputy Commissioner of Financial Incentives Division, Elena Kamener and Jeff Dickinson, who are both with SB Freeman, the TIF consultants for the amendment. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the amendment for 43rd Cottage Grove tax increment financing district. The main purpose of why we're here today is to increase the budget based off an additional 12 years of increment that was previously approved at the October 26th City Council meeting. Also, we're proposing to expand the boundaries to include vacant lands and two schools, the former Price Elementary and King High School. As part of the extension process, we will also update the land use plan and make minor changes to the plan language prior to receiving council approval. The 43rd Cottage Grove TIF is generally bounded by Pershing Avenue to the north, Drexel Boulevard to the east, 48th Street to the south, Vincennes Avenue to the west. The entire TIF area measures approximately 232 acres. The added area, as you can see in the hatch, is east of Cottage Grove Avenue. In order to establish a TIF district, the state of Illinois, the state TIF Act requires that the certain eligibility factors are legally demonstrated within the area as blighting to be present. For vacant land, there are two paths for blighting eligibility. The first path requires 2 of 6 factors to be present to a meaningful extent and reasonably distributed throughout the area. The second path requires at least 1 of 6 possible factors that also need to be present to a meaningful extent and reasonably distributed throughout the area. After a thorough review, it was determined that they met 1 factor eligibility for the vacant lands. A flooding study indicated the runoff from 100% of the added area contributed flooding within the watershed of both areas. For the improved lands, at least 3 of 13 factors must be present in the area to qualify as a conservation area. A study was performed and it was determined that the added area qualified as an improved area with the following factors. Deterioration, which includes major defects in the secondary buildings, components, and surface improvements. Presence of structures below minimum code standards, which do not meet equitable standard of zoning, subdivision, building, fire, and government codes. And inadequate utilities, which includes underground and overhead utilities such as storm sewers, storm drainage, sanitary sewers, water lines, and gas, telephone, and electrical services, which are either insufficient, deteriorated, obsolete, or in disrepair to the service area. The redevelopment plan includes a general land use plan of the future development within the TIF district. The entire area is identified as a mix of uses, which generally includes commercial, residential, institutional, open space, and right-of-way. Each TIF district has a list of goals and objectives. The general goal is to reduce and eliminate the conditions that qualify the area, and objectives include assisting the future economic development throughout the area, improving infrastructure, parks, and schools, and creating new job opportunities within the redevelopment project area. The TIF funds have been used successfully in many projects within the area, including the shops and lofts at 47, which is the photo here. TIFs were also used for the Harts multifamily 1, 2, and 3 phases. 45th Cottage Grove Phase 1, Sumac Park, street improvements, and then it's been used 19 times. The SBIF program, the Small Business Improvement Program, has been used 19 times within this area. In order to make the future projects a reality, the redevelopment plan amendment includes an updated budget to capture the increment that will generate during the additional 12 years of the TIF. The expected increment to be generated and expended is $160 million. As you can see, it is expected the majority of the funds in this TIF area are for public infrastructure, affordable housing construction, and property assembly items. We anticipate that the pending TIF fund projects in the area will include the redevelopment of the Lillian Marcy Phase 1, 43rd, 47th, and Cottage Grove streetscapes, the Small Business Improvement Fund, and then potential future projects include the 4400 South Grove Phase 2, Bronzeville Trail construction, the King and Price School improvements, and then the future phases of the Lillian Marcy Theater. I want to thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ryan. I don't know if Alderman Sophia King or Alderman Dow are present. If they are, or if a member of their staff are available, if you'd like to make comments now. Tech support, can you tell me if either Alderman King or Dow are on the screen?
Yes, there is someone raising their hand, so I'm trying to promote them.
Okay, great, thank you.
They
And who
just
did you-
accepted the promotion just now.
And who did you just promote, please?
It's Lynn Johnson Stevenson. I don't know if it's from Alderman's office or who that is.
Okay, Lynn Johnson Stevenson, are you from one of the 2 aldermen's office?
Well, actually, no, I'm a resident of the 4th Ward.
Okay, you'll have an opportunity to speak during the public comments section. Thank you for your participation.
All right.
All right, thank you. Okay. Bob, can you confirm that no written statements from the public were submitted on this matter?
Yes, that's confirmed. Nothing was submitted before 24 hours before the meeting. or
Thank
within
you.
24 hours.
Thank you for that confirmation. Commissioners, besides having Ryan Slattery representing the city staff, DPD is also joined by Elena Camier and Jeff Dickinson, who are the TIF consultants for the first three of today's agenda items, and they are here to help answer your questions. Commissioners, do you have any questions for DPD or the TIF consultants? If you do, please raise your hand. Kamal, I don't see any hands raised by members of the commission. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairwoman.
All right, thank you. The chair will now invite members of the public who have used the raise your hand feature to be recognized by the chair. Each person called upon by the chair to speak will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. So, Lynn Johnson Stevenson, welcome back. And thank you for participating in the meeting, and you're now able to make your comments.
I just had a quick question. On the budget, it said 52,900,000 for the rehabilitation of existing buildings. Does that mean that there will be funds available for residents who have structures that need help?
Thank you for your question. Ryan Slattery, would you like to respond on behalf of the department?
Sure. So the budget that we have here is actually, it's an estimate of what we're going to use. We can go ahead and allocate the funds in any of those line items. It's the total project is actually the can't be changed. So that total was that most that we can spend within the area. The 43rd Cottage Grove was created to help with the commercial corridors, not for the residential. So currently right now we don't have any residential TIF programs within this area.
Okay, thank you for your response. If there are no further questions or comments from Lynn Johnson Stevens.
Well, he answered my question, so I don't have any other comments.
All right, well, thank you so much for participating in today's public hearing. It's important that we hear from you. The next individual who has raised their hand is Dee Sims. And you have the floor.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your time. You might be educating me a little bit because I'm not sure where TIF funds come from. So please bear with my questions. And these questions are the same questions that I have for all of the other amendments also proposed. But for the defined area, are the monies coming from property taxes? And then my next question is, could you please share again the screen of what properties and organizations are going to be improved or proposed to use for the TIF funds? And then also I have a question. Does this funding impact organizations in the defined area that might be able to qualify for the hub zone or the 8-8? And then if so, do you have an idea of how many small businesses might be impacted? And do you have an idea of how many micro businesses are in the defined area that you're talking about? And then lastly, I saw in the budget job training, and I'm curious, can organizations tap into those fundings to provide job training, or are those organizations and dollars already pre-allocated to organizations that you already have determined who will provide that job training? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sims, for participating in today's public hearing and for your questions. I will ask Ryan Slattery and members of the department and TIF team to respond to the questions.
Sure. So I think I wrote them all down. So the first one for where the TIF funding is coming from. When a TIF is created, we establish a base equalized assessed value for the area. At that point, all of the property taxes that go to your normals, to the park districts, to CPS, to the city, Cook County, they all still get distributed throughout as to those taxing bodies. Anything after that year after the base is set, anything incremental to that then is allocated into the special allocation fund for TIF. That allows us to use those incremental property taxes to do any TIF eligible costs. So that might be street improvements, might be a park, it might be an economic development deal, affordable housing, anything that the TIF Act allows us to use those TIF funds for. So it's a tax diversion. It's not a tax increase, is what a lot of people get confused about. So hopefully that answers your first question. The future, I have to reshare my screen. Sorry, I can reshow the. Jeez. So the future projects, the main one that is really going on right now is the Lillian Marcy phase 1. The streetscapes, the 3 streetscapes, SPIF will continue to be used, and then future Lillian Marcy, the Bronzeville Trail construction, which is the Kenwin embankment area it's also within the Bronzeville TIF as well. The schools, anything that we can, these are just potential future projects. Doesn't necessarily mean that these are the only projects that we will be funding. It's additional 12 years. So these are the ones that we know of currently.
Ryan, we don't see your screen.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Sorry. 1 second. You see it now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So that's the future projects that I just went through and I don't want. Yeah. The third question, I don't know what that program is, the Hubs 88. So I'm not sure what it's nothing related to TIF that I'm aware of. So I'm not sure if anyone else is aware, but I don't know anything about that program. And then finally for the jobs, we do have TIFWorks. It's currently not used as regularly, but that is the program that is hopefully going to come out in the near future as a robust change to it. But I would recommend looking into TIFWorks if you have any job trainings that you're interested in. It's not dedicated to anything particular. It's when people come out and they say, I need, job training for this particular thing, and we can help reimburse if you're within the area. So I would look at, it's TIFWorks, TIF Works, WRKS. I think I answered all the questions.
Okay, for D. Sims, if there are no follow-up questions or comments, because you did have a few minutes left, or at least 1 minute left from your public remarks. We will.
The other question that I had was that and I do appreciate you answering my questions, first of all, so thank you for that. But the last question that I had, I know I had a lot, so maybe it was just overlooked, but I was just wondering if you have an idea of the small businesses in the area or the micro businesses, and if they, how can they tap into any type of funding, or if they're going to be impacted by this TIF at all?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Yeah. So there's the Small Business Improvement Fund, SPIF, is a resource for small businesses to receive grants. For commercial businesses, it's up to $150,000 that you can receive for TIF eligible items. I would strongly encourage any small business owners within the area to look into the SPIF program. It has been used, I believe, 19 times within this area. So there is some traction, but I think in the future, hopefully other businesses will be able to partake within it, and having the additional 12 years and the additional increment will allow us to continue using SPIF within the area.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Sims, for participating in and for your questions and participating in today's public hearing. It's important. Kamal, are there any raised hands from members of the public?
No, we have Sharon Pope.
I'm sorry, there is a raised hand.
Yes, raised hand by Sharon Pope.
Kamal, could you please also add Chip Hastings to a panelist list?
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay, Sharon Pope, thank you for participating in today's meeting. We're ready for your questions or comments.
Sharon Pope, you are unmuted. You can speak. We don't hear you. Chairwoman, I think might be something wrong with Sharon's mic. Cannot hear her.
Okay, well, let's give it just another second or two. Perhaps she can unmute on her end. I see that you have unmuted her on our end.
She is unmuted in Zoom. I think her microphone may not be working.
Okay, well, thank you, Kamal, for that clarification. If there are no further questions or comments regarding the proposed 43rd Cottage TIF, we will now adjourn the public hearing and reopen the regular CDC meeting so that we can call the item to a vote. The resolution before us recommends to the City Council of the City of Chicago the approval of the redevelopment plan for the 43rd Cottage Grove Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, Amendment Number 3, and the adoption of Amendment Number 3 for the area. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Wheat.
Thank you, Secretary Wheat. Do I have a second?
Second, Thomas.
Seconded by Commissioner Thomas. I will now call the roll. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom, Secretary Wheat,
Yes.
Commissioner Buford,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan McKibben, Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs, Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino, and Chair Butler votes yes.
Chairwoman, Commissioner Griggs has joined us as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Griggs, were you present? Would you care to vote on this agenda item?
Abstain.
All right, thank you. The motion passes. For our second item of old business, we will recess from the regular meeting of the Community Development Commission in order to hold the second of the public hearings on the matter of Bronzeville TIF Amendment Number 6, and to recommend or oppose adoption of Amendment Number 6 for the area. Ryan Slattery will present the staff report and presentation on behalf of the Department of Planning and Development. Ryan, you may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, Chair Butler and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Ryan Slattery. I'm with the Department of Planning and Development. I'm here today again with Tim Jeffries, Deputy Commissioner of the Financial Incentives Division, along with Elena Kaminer and Jeff Dickinson, who are both with SB Freeman, the TIF consultants for this amendment. The main purpose for why we're here is to increase the Bronzeville TIF District bus budget based off an additional 12 years of increment that was previously approved at the October 26th City Council meeting. Also, we are proposing to extend the boundaries of the area to include vacant lands and a portion of the future Bronzeville Trail. As part of this extension process, we will also update the land use plan and make minor changes to the plan language prior to receiving council approval. The Bronzeville TIF is generally bounded by the Stevenson Expressway to the north, Moe Drive to the east, 40th Street to the south, and the Dan Ryan Expressway to the west. The entire TIF area measures approximately 491 acres. The added area, as you can see by the hatch, includes the Michael Reese expansion area, Pilgrim Gospel expansion area, and then the Kenwood expansion area. In order to establish a TIF district, the state TIF Act requires that certain eligibility factors that are legally demonstrated within the area to be present. For vacant land, there are two paths for blighting eligibility. The first path requires 2 of 6 factors to be present to a meaningful extent and reasonably distributed throughout the area. The second path requires at least 1 of 6 possible factors that also need to be present to a meaningful extent and reasonably distributed throughout the area. After a review, it was determined that the vacant area exhibited both paths of blighting factors for the Michael Reese expansion area. The 2-factor requirement path include lack of growth in EAV, which has been less than the growth of the city and CPI for 5 of the last 5 years. Also, obsolete planning, including not having adequate right-of-ways, alleys, or parcel size shapes in line with city standards. The added area for Michael Reese and Pilgrim Gospel met the 1-factor eligibility for vacant lands. A flooding study indicated that the runoff from 100% of the added area contributed to flooding within the watershed for both of them. For the improved lands, at least 3 of 13 factors must be present for the area to qualify as a conservation area. A study was performed and it was determined that the Kenwood expansion area qualifies as an improved area with the following factors. Deterioration, which includes major defects in the secondary building components and surface improvements. Presence of structures below minimum code standards, which do not meet the applicable standards of zoning, subdivision, building, fire, and government codes. And then also inadequate utilities, which includes underground and overhead utilities such as storm sewers, storm drainage, sanitary sewer, water lines, gas, telephone, and electrical services, which are either insufficient, deteriorated, obsolete, or in disrepair of the service area. The redevelopment plan includes a general land use plan for the future development of TIF districts. The entire area is identified as a mix of uses, which includes commercial, residential, institutional, open space, and right-of-way. Each TIF district has a list of goals and objectives. The general goal of this is to reduce and eliminate the conditions that qualify the area. And the objectives include assisting future economic development throughout the area, improving infrastructure, parks, and schools, and creating new job opportunities within the redevelopment project area. The TIF funds have been used successfully in many projects throughout the area, including the Quad Arts and Rec Center, which at Ellis Park, which was formerly the Quad Community Art and Rec Center. The TIF funds were also used for Phillips Academy High School for a gymnasium annex, Dunbar School, turf field improvements, and other public improvements throughout the area. In order to make the future project a reality, the redevelopment plan amendment includes an updated budget to capture the increment that will be generated through the additional 12 years of the TIF. The expected increase will to be generated and expended is $260 million. As you can see, it's expected that the majority of the funds in the area will be used for public infrastructure, affordable housing construction, and property assembly items. We anticipate that the future TIF fund projects in the area will include the redevelopment of 21st District Police Station, Renaissance Apartments, and the SWIFT program. I want to thank you for your time again today, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ryan. Kamal, can you confirm, I don't see Alderman Sophia King or Alderman Pat Dow on the list of participants. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairwoman. I don't see them either.
Okay, and I also don't see members of their staff.
I have Nicole Jackson raised hand.
Okay,
Hi, and I'm sorry, I think that was preempted. I'm not part of either of the alderman staff, but I am a resident and business owner in the community, and I had questions about one of the slides.
well, okay, well, thank you so much, Ms. Jackson, for joining us, and we will answer your questions. We'll get back to you during the public portion of this hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I do have a point of clarification, and I wonder if Ryan might go back to the map that shows the expanded geography. I'm the areas that are being highlighted. Can you just explain why those those areas are being highlighted, and let's say other areas, there's like a hole in the donut, but it seems those areas that are highlighted in a black line look like they're very intentional. So could you just explain why the boundary is being expanded to include these areas?
Sure. So the Michael Reese expansion area actually was amended back in 2014 to include it. However, the legal description wasn't correct at the time. So we're just including that as the Michael Reese site as it gets developed. Then we can go ahead and use that additional increment throughout the area to further help redevelopment the greater Bronzeville area. For the Pilgrim Gospel expansion area, it's currently a redevelopment site. We're not sure if it will receive TIF, if it will be receiving TIF, but we wanted to include it in case there is future needs for the redevelopment within that area. And then the Kedwin expansion area, that's for the Bronzeville Trail. So we're including portions of it that aren't currently within TIF districts. Just to the south of that is the 43rd Cottage Grove TIF district.
Can you explain why, being that the Kenwood line is a line that goes east-west, why the area in the middle is not included? Because
it's currently within the 43rd Cottage Grove TIF.
All right, it's already in.
Yep.
Okay. So I do know, particularly with the Pilgrim Baptist Church expansion, the actual structure, and I think those who know the neighborhood well know these 3 historic walls that are propped up by steel bracing, have never been in a TIF district. And yet it is the project that is, while their parking lot next door is in an existing district. And so as that project has come forward, and it obviously is going to be in need of significant funds, the city was never able to help because there are no TIF eligible expenses on a parking lot. So effectively, the TIF, having their parking lot be in a TIF district meant nothing. Having the remnants of the historic Pilgrim Baptist Church in a TIF district does suggest that in the future, if they come forward, that they would be able to apply TIF eligible expenses, whatever, and often adaptive reuse and rehab are an eligible expense. So that is in part what that very small addition is all about. I thought that would be clear, and I appreciate the clarification on the Kenwood line, which again is another potential public amenity and improvement to the neighborhood, which would be a walking and biking trail in the middle of Bronzeville. So I just wanted the public to understand that these are areas where we anticipate there will be a project in the future, but they do have to be a part of a TIF district in order to be eligible.
Thank you so much for Commissioner Cox for for those questions and for the additional clarification. It's very helpful. Bob McKenna, can you confirm that no written statements from the public were submitted on this matter within the time frame allowed?
Yeah, that is correct.
Great, thank you. So now I'd like to invite any questions that the CDC commissioners may have. If you have questions, you could please raise your hand. Commissioner Curtis, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. I don't remember that we have had a religious institution in the past being considered for TIF funding. And I'm just curious, I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, I'm just curious, is the thought that the church brings value to the neighborhood? Certainly there's no additional tax benefit from the church. And how is that justified to help support a religious institution, a nonprofit religious institution.
So I can say that.
Ryan, can you identify yourself?
Sorry, sure. Ryan Slattery, Department of Planning and Development, Financial Planning Analyst. I can say that this is supposed to be, I believe, a museum. So we have done religious organizations for different like if there was a community center or something of that sort. The churches, you're right, we've never, to my knowledge, have never used TIF funding to build or construct a church. But I think when there is a community use out of it, we have used it before, and I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head right now, and maybe Tim or Chip would be able to help me with that, but.
Is there anyone?
This is Tim Jeffries. I would also add that this project was originally, it's a historic building. It was originally designed by Louis Sullivan and Dagmar Adler. It was originally a synagogue and then subsequently became the Pilgrim Baptist Church. So I don't think that we would support the use of TIF for a project if it was explicitly religious, but certainly there is a strong history of the city using TIF funds to support Chicago landmarks.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, and this
Yes,
is Commissioner
Commissioner
Cox
Cox,
again.
please. Sure.
My understanding is that the property is currently under the ownership of the church. If it were to be developed as a cultural institution, it would be developed as a separate entity that would not be a faith-based entity. So, you know, the church is not going to run a gospel museum. It is going to be a separate entity with a legitimate claim to access those funds. So it would not be a church receiving those public dollars. But we're way out ahead here. But they would have to establish some kind of partnership with the development entities, create a separate entity, and then eventually those funds would be able to be expended. But the point is well taken. I appreciate it being brought up.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. Commissioner Curtis, any additional questions?
No, that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. And actually, this is directed to Commissioner Cox. Just to clarify, you mean that this separate entity will be a tax-paying entity that will pay real estate taxes on the property, right?
That is the assumption. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure I don't see Tim Jeffries, others who would know about other similar cultural institutions that have been stood up that are tax-paying. I mean, I don't know if if it will be a nonprofit, but I know it won't be a religious institution.
And my question is kind of on the same role with Commissioner Curtis. Just usually in the TIF district, the folks that the institutions that benefit from the TIF actually are adding to the TIF as well. That's so. I would assume that the entity that will own it will pay real estate taxes on it.
And Tim, you might want to get some clarity on that. I mean, it's a very valid question, but I'm not the expert on that.
I'm not sure about the specific case and the specific user, but I think in the past, I mean, they qualify. A nonprofit qualifies for nonprofit status pursuant to their property taxes if the work that they're doing on the site wholly relates to their mission, which if this is a museum would be secular in nature. And then, I mean, we do have a history of funding projects with TIF, but we, consider their tax exempt status as part of our evaluation on how we choose to deploy our TIF funds.
I see that Chip Hastings has his hands raised. Chip from the department.
Hastings, Department of Planning and Development. Tim just addressed the question I was going to answer as well. It's not unusual for us to fund, and we're getting to Commissioner's point, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves on the structure of the project. But it's not unusual to support financially, whether it's TIF, new market tax credits, et cetera, to support not-for-profit entities that are operated by others, whether it's a private entity or a not-for-profit. It would be eligible for both TIF and other resources that we could contribute to get the building up and running and support the rehab of a historic structure.
All right, thank you, Chip, for that additional information. Are there other members of the CDC that have questions or comments? Kamal, can you confirm that there are no additional CDC members that have their hands raised? I see Commissioner Curtis.
Yes, thank you. So then am I to understand that if funding was considered for the church, that would come before the commission at that time?
This is Tim Jeffries with DPD. That's correct.
Thank you.
Right, Commissioner Curtis, any additional questions or comments?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Kamal, can you confirm that I don't see any hands raised from members of the commission?
No other hands raised, Chair.
All right, great, thank you. So I will now invite members of the public who have used the raise your hand function to be recognized by the chair. Each person called upon by the chair to speak will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. So I see one hand raised, and that is from Nicole M. Jackson. Nicole M. Jackson, you may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for providing us with this opportunity, first and foremost. I have a question. I constantly see, I own businesses in the Bronzeville, as well as I'm a resident and land that I'm looking to develop, but I always see a gap in terms of funding and opportunities for the area along the State Street corridor from 39th to 47th. It doesn't fit in the Bronzeville 43rd or 47th Street TIF. Is there something specific to this area along the east side of the State Street corridor that is not part of housing that's privately owned?
Is there a member of the department that would like to address this question?
Ryan, I mean, I think obviously the speaker is making reference to a map, so I'm not quite sure what the map is.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can put it back up.
Sure. So
yeah, it was a Bronzeville map that was there, but there's and even in the previous slide, the 43rd Street, it does not seem to include State Street south of Pershing or north of 47th Street.
right. So Ryan Slater of Department of Planning and Development. It's that area is within the 47th and King Drive and the 47th State Street TIF districts. So they're in two separate TIF districts, that area.
Okay, thank you. So it's the 47th in State.
And 47th King, both of them. It's two of them.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying. Now, is that something that will be addressed today as well?
No, those TIF districts aren't scheduled to expire in the near future. These two, Bronzeville and 43rd and Cottage were scheduled to expire at the end of this year. So that's the reason why we had to go through the major amendment to extend it for an additional 12 years.
Thank you very much for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, any additional questions or comments?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who have questions or comments? Well, I don't see additional hands raised. Can you confirm?
No other hands raised, Chair.
Great, thank you. If there are no further questions or comments regarding the proposed Bronzeville TIF amendment, we will now adjourn the public hearing and reopen the regular CDC meeting so that we can call the item to a vote. The resolution before us recommends to the City Council of the City of Chicago the approval of the redevelopment plan for the Bronzeville Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, Amendment Number 6, and the adoption of Amendment Number 6 for the area. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Thomas.
So moved by Commissioner Thomas. Do I have a second?
Second, Curtis.
Seconded by Commissioner Curtis. I will now call the roll. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom, Secretary Wheat,
Yes.
Commissioner Buford,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan McKibben, Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino. And Chair Butler votes yes, the motion passes. Commissioners, for our third item of old business, we are again required to recess from our regular CDC meeting in order to hold a required public hearing on the amendment of an existing TIF. Specifically, the Department of Planning and Development will be recommending approval of the redevelopment plan for the proposed Madden Wells TIF redevelopment project area amendment number 1. And to that end, we'll be accepting public comments. So we will now recess from the regular meeting of the Community Development Commission in order to hold the public hearing on the matter of the proposed Madden Wells TIF redevelopment project area amendment number 1, and to recommend or oppose adoption of the tax increment financing for the area. Ryan Slattery will present the staff report on behalf of the Department of Planning and Development. Ryan, you may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, Chair Butler, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Ryan Slattery. I'm with the Department of Planning and Development. I'm here today with Tim Jeffries, Deputy Commissioner of the Financial Incentives Division, along with Elena Kemner and Jeff Dickinson, who are both FSP Freeman, the TIF consultant for the amendment. The main purpose for why we're here today, it's the wrong one, sorry, too many. Here today is for to extend the TIF district for an additional 12 years to allow further redevelopment of the project area. Also, we're proposing to expand the boundaries to include vacant lands to the west and Ellis Park. As part of the extension process, we'll amend the termination date from 12/31/2026 to 12/31/2038, revise the budget, update the land use plan, and make minor changes to the plan language prior to receiving council approval. The Madden Wells TIF is generally bounded by 37th Street to the north, Lake Park Avenue to the east, Oakwood Boulevard to the south, and Vincennes Avenue to the west. The entire TIF area measures 90 acres. The add area you can see in the hatch it includes to the west to Rhodes and to the north to Browning Avenue. In order to establish a TIF district, the Illinois TIF Act requires that certain eligibility factors are legally demonstrated within the area. For vacant land, there are 2 paths for applying eligibility. The first path requires 2 of 6 factors to be present to a meaningful extent and reasonably distributed throughout the area. The second path requires at least 1 of 6 possible factors that also need to be present to a meaningful extent and reasonably distributed throughout the area. After a review, it was determined that the vacant area exhibited both paths to applying factors. The 2-factor requirement paths include lack of growth in EAV, which the EAV growth of the expanded area has been less than the growth of the city and CPI for the 5 of the last 5 years. And then also obsolete planning, including not having adequate right-of-ways, alleys, or parcel size shapes in line with city standards. The added area also met the 1-factor eligibility for vacant lands. There was a flooding study which indicated that the runoff from 100% of the added area contributed to flooding within the watershed. The redevelopment plan includes a general land use of the future development within the TIF districts. The entire area is identified as a mix of uses, which include commercial, residential, institutional, open space, and right-of-way. Each TIF district has a list of goals and objectives. The general goal is to reduce or eliminate the conditions that qualify the area. And the objectives include assisting future development of the CHA transformation projects, improving infrastructure and parks, and creating new job opportunities within the redevelopment project area. The TIF funds have been used successfully in many projects in the area, primarily for the Oakwood Shores community. TIF funds were also used for the dog park at 3906 South Lake Park and Donahue School improvements. In order to make the future projects a reality, the redevelopment plan amendment includes an updated budget to capture the increment that'll be generated during the additional 12 years of the TIF. The expected increment to be generated and expended is $120 million. As you can see, the expected, the majority of the funds will be funds for this TIF are in the affordable housing, construction, property assembly, and public infrastructure line items. We anticipate the future TIF fund projects in the area will include continued development in the Oakwood Shores, with Oakwood Shores 3-1 in process and future CHA transformation projects. That said, we also expect a future investment in infrastructure and parks. Again, I want to thank you for your time today, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ryan. Is Alderman Sophia King or anyone from her staff present? Kamal, I don't see Alderman King or members of her staff. Can you confirm that is correct?
There are no hands raised, so I'm assuming there's no staff.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And Bob McKenna, can you confirm that no written statements from the public were submitted on this matter? Bob, if you're speaking, I can't hear you. But I don't.
Sorry, that, yes, I can confirm that no, there were no items that were submitted or questions submitted 24 hours before the meeting.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the department or the TIF consultant? If you do have questions, please use the raise your hand function. So Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. This is just a question in terms of just information. I'm very familiar with the area. The addition of this new TIF area, I guess I'm wondering about it in the sense of there's a lot of unused land that's still in the existing TIF area. And so want to understand why the additional TIF is being added when the area that has already been under TIF seems like it has not been fully developed. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, Ryan Slattery with DPD. So the community builders, which is the master consultant for the area, they are working on the western portion of it. They still plan on doing the infill construction within the area, and could and most likely will use TIF as a resource to do the additional infill within the area. But the Oakwood Shores 3-1, I believe, is within that area, and so that's the reason why they wanted to expand it. They always we actually received state authority back in 2009 for this extension, and so now they are getting to that western area, and so they wanted that area to be included now so they can go ahead and be able to use TIF as a resource for the development of that area.
Just just a point of information that I don't know, maybe you can help me understand that. So when you're looking at the whole area and there's spots and pockets that are developed and not developed, then you add another area that needs to be developed. How is it then, and this I guess applies for any area, I just know that area better. How is it then that you ultimately get to the point where the whole area is developed if it's kind of spotty development and adding on where there's not development and then using money for that area, but then the other area is not done? How do you ever get it where it's all fully developed if that's the way in which they go about it?
It's a great question. I think the additional 12 years, hopefully that will help with the infill. I mean, part of the problem that we had, and I don't think this is going to answer your question, I apologize, but part of the problem that we had was they were to the west of Vincent's Avenue. They were already starting development within the area. And so we were unable to use TIF as a resource within that. I don't have an answer of how we get them to go ahead and complete the infill within the TIF districts, only to say that we have now up till 2038 for them to continue the development of it. So we are adding an additional 12 years that hopefully will allow them to be able to finish off the development in the area.
So why wouldn't it be prudent to say, no, we don't think you need an additional TIF area now because you haven't made good on the area that you originally were supposed to be developing with the original TIF dollars? Why would we then just say, well, hopefully with another 12 years, that would work out well? Because from my vantage point, if you are having, whole pockets not developed and it's just not being done in a cohesive way, that wouldn't be the best use of the TIF dollars. It wouldn't be best for the folks in the area. So help me understand why we should support it when they haven't actually done what I thought the initial understanding was for that development of that area to be. That's not completed. So in my mind, it doesn't make sense to then add another area, which will then just be spottily kind of developed. What am I missing?
This is Tim Jeffries with the Department of Planning and Development. I think it has taken a bit of a scattershot development pattern, and I think the most recent project, it did start a while ago and it's moving forward now. And we work with both CHA and the Department of Housing to get these individual components and individual phases on. I think I can say, and I don't want to, I can let the commissioner speak for himself. This administration and my commissioner certainly has a different prioritization on design and development. And I think that we'll see these things move forward in a more cohesive fashion right now with the future phases. That said, it's like these are affordable housing CHA replacement, and the city funds will be needed throughout for them. And so that's just the unfortunate reality of these CHA replacement housing is that they can't go without public funds, and this is the resource that we need to make it go.
And so Commissioner Cox, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, no, Commissioner Davis, I appreciate the question and quite frankly, the critique on these plans for transformation that were big, audacious, aspirational plans after demolishing thousands of units of housing. And I think the initial thought was that the gaps that remain would be filled in with different housing options, market rate housing, ownership mixed in with rental. And now they're at the point where they have to fill in those gaps and they need the funding source in order to make that happen. This particular administration has been less enamored with this type of redevelopment. And probably have noticed we're tracking a whole lot closer to filling in the gaps on existing streets and existing commercial corridors. But we do have these projects that were conceived of years ago and who are now, they're finally getting to that phase where they have to fill in the gaps that they created in their development model. So this is really just the tool to do that. But I think I'm as much a critic of this way of developing as you are. It does leave those communities feeling incomplete. You buy a spanking new house and you are next to a vacant lot because they haven't built the second or third phase. But be that as it may, I do think that our commitment is to let them finish the job. And the TIF tool is the tool that will enable that to happen. If that helps a little bit contextualize it.
One last question. I don't want to monopolize the conversation. So in adding the additional TIF area, is that to add additional options for CHA? Or is it to add additional options for market rate and affordable? Or is it to add additional options for additional businesses? Because if you look at the last two things we've discussed, even that 43rd Street corridor, I know the way that we break it up is all very, very different, but it's all in that same area. So you've got a lot of different moving parts, but still a lot of areas that have been not been developed for years and years. I wish the aldermen were on, because maybe they could add some more color to this conversation. It seems like just adding more money and space when there hasn't been a good use of the money and space in the past. So I'm just not inclined to say that that makes sense. I hear the explanation, but it just doesn't seem, it doesn't pass the straight face test to me.
This again, Tim Jeffries, Department of Planning. I think we would anticipate that our funds would go predominantly to support CHA housing. It's pretty rare that we support market rate housing directly for a lot of reasons, but yeah, in this area, it would almost certainly be towards the CHA housing, and then to the extent that we're able to support the small businesses on the select corridors, Pershing, for example,
Right.
that roads perhaps as well, like we would look to do that as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davis, any additional comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. This is a very, very insightful, very needed discussion. We appreciate you raising the question and sharing your observations, Commissioner Davis. Are there other members of the commission who have questions or comments? So I will now call upon members of the public who have used the raise your hand feature to be recognized by the chair. Each person called upon by the chair to speak will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. So I see I have 2 hands raised from members of the public. Thank you so much. And so I think, let me see. Did I see Walter Burnett?
Yes, the one was Alderman Burnett. I just promoted him.
Okay, so we will let Alderman Burnett, if he is still on. I don't see him just yet. Oh, I see him now.
Yeah,
Thank you so
I'm
much,
here.
Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, thank you guys, and I appreciate all the hard work that you guys do every month for the city of Chicago. And I was trying my best to find how much y'all was getting paid in the budget, and I couldn't find it, man. It's like, well, these people work so hard, where their money at? But anyway.
It's out of the civic duty that we participate in this
That's right.
very worthy endeavor. So
Yes, thank you all.
it's all psychic income for members of the public. We are unpaid volunteers.
That's right. Thank you all very much for your civic duty. And I'm doing mine today with the election. But I did want to take a minute, and I know it's not up yet, but it's getting ready to come up. M-Hub, that's in my ward, is a very exciting project. I'm very excited for Haven. As you all know, he used to be a fellow with the city. He came up with this idea to attract developers and research and development in the city of Chicago. And he just been busting out at the seams over there on Chicago Avenue. And so he found a different site. I think is a good investment for the city to enhance what they're doing, because most of the folks that, excuse me guys, one moment. Most of the folks that they get to, excuse me, one moment. I apologize. Most of the folks that they get to invent and create businesses in their spot usually look for bigger places to advance in the city of Chicago. So I'm hoping that him moving over on Chicago Avenue, getting the TIF money from us and other folks to be able to enhance the area and space where folks can invent and create businesses, that they would all move back to my ward right after they grow, that they would move into 27 ward. That's my goal. But if they move anywhere else in the city, I'm cool with that too. But first the 27 ward, I hope. But I support this 100%. I think this is a great investment for the city of Chicago. And I'm so proud of everything that has come out of that place. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Alderman Burnett. We know that you and your colleagues in the city council are very busy today. And we appreciate you making time to make comments, and we will certainly, take under consideration your comments and your support when we consider this item, which will be up, which is the next item on our agenda following this third TIF amendment request. So we have one member of the public who has used the raise their hand function. And that is Lynn Johnson Stevenson.
Yes.
Yes, please. Please begin. Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you. I've been a resident of the area for 20 years. And in the past, when there were TIF funds available, there were opportunities for residents to seek funds to improve their housing stock or their environments or their infrastructures. I didn't see any notation of any funds being allocated to residential. Are there any funds being allocated to residents, existing residents?
Thank you for your question. Can I ask the member of the Department of Planning and Development to respond?
Sure, Ryan Slattery with Department of Planning and Development. We previously had the TIF Neighborhood Improvement Program funds. It is currently not active as of right now, and so I don't believe it was actually within Madden Wells, primarily because of the CHA transformation projects that have taken the majority of the TIF funds throughout the area. But I would highly recommend reaching out to your alderman and letting them know that you're interested in the TIF-NIP program throughout the area. They can work with the Department of Housing to see if that is something that we can go ahead and use in the future within the area.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for your participation in today's meeting. Do you have additional questions?
No, I'm lowering my hand.
Okay, great. All right, thank you so much. We appreciate you participating. I do not see any additional hands raised from members of the public. Can I ask tech support to confirm that, please?
No other hands raised, Chairwoman.
Great, thank you so much. Given that there are no further questions or comments from members of the public, we will now adjourn the public hearing and reopen the regular CDC meeting so that we may call the item to a vote. The resolution before us recommends approval of the redevelopment plan for the Madden Wells TIF redevelopment project area amendment number 1 and the adoption of amendment number 1 for the area. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Thomas.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Do I have a second?
Second, Wheat.
Thank you, Secretary Wheat. I will now call the roll. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom. Secretary Wheat.
Yes.
Commissioner Buford.
Yes.
Commissioner Chan McKibben. Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, very simple.
Commissioner Davis.
No.
Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino. And Chair Butler votes yes. The motion passes. Commissioners, for our first and only item of new business, we are seeking approval to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with M-Hub for the rehabilitation of the property located at 240 North Ashland Avenue in the Kinsey Industrial Corridor Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of M-Hub as developer. Beth McGuire and Terrence Johnson will present the staff report on behalf of the Department of Planning and Development.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Butler and members of the Community Development Commission. For the record, my name is Terrence Johnson, Assistant Commissioner in the Department of Planning and Development. I will say it's very difficult to ever follow Alderman Burnett when he's talking on behalf of his projects in his ward, but I will do my best. I'm here today to request the designation of M-Hub as a developer for the project at 240 North Ashland Avenue and request authority to negotiate an RDA with M-Hub. With me today is Haven Allen, the Chief Executive Officer, and Manas Mahandru, Chief Operating Officer from M-Hub, and they are also here available to answer questions. The project is located at 240 North Ashland in the nearest West Side community area, the 27th Ward, and the Kinsey Industrial TIF District. Subject property is located in the southwest corner of Ashland and Fulton in the Kinsey Plant Manufacturing District, and is 1 block north of the Ashland Green Line Station. This is a current view of the property, which is overall in stable condition, but still needs some improvement. This picture shows what the building currently looks like. It is listed as an orange building in the city's Historic Resources Survey, meaning it contributes to the historic character of the area. Note the iconic clock tower, which will be brought back to working condition. The proposed project is the redevelopment of the 79,000 square foot building at 240 North Ashland. The property was originally constructed in 1926 as the Cook Brothers Department Store, but was most recently the headquarters of CB2. If approved, M-Hub will relocate from their current facility at 965 West Chicago Ave and redevelop this space as a manufacturing incubator and accelerator containing labs, meeting space, and offices. This adaptive reuse aligns with the Chicago Recovery Task Force recommendation that the city build on the region's historic strength in manufacturing, especially encouraging a greater number of local, small, and medium-sized companies, as well as minority-owned companies, to join industry associations and strengthen partnerships. The scope of the work is focused on building interior and includes transforming areas into various laboratory functions, testing facilities, and common spaces. In order to facilitate this project, M-Hub is seeking TIF funds in the amount not to exceed $17.6 million, or 37.5% of their total project cost, which is estimated to be $46 million. M-Hub is the nation's leading nonprofit incubator for hard tech manufacturing, which means physical products enabled by software. Since 2016, M-Hub has provided accessible lab space to Chicago's emerging entrepreneurs that combine the city's legacy as a hub for manufacturing with cutting-edge technology. Since 2006, their facility has been the home to 450 entrepreneurial startups who have received 410 patents, created 3,900 new jobs, and secured $1.3 billion with a B in total investments in Chicago's manufacturing sector. This work is especially critical given M-Hub's focus on reducing structural barriers to entrepreneurship for underrepresented founders and drive wealth creation for a more diverse set of business owners. They launched the Catalyze program in 2021, which has raised $1.35 million in funding so far for Black, Latino, Middle Eastern, and women founders, with a 5-year goal of $8.6 million. M-Hub also offers subsidized memberships to entrepreneurs in need of assistance. The cost of the project, including acquisition and renovation, is expected to be $46 million. The TIF assistance will not exceed 17.5. Equity, debt, new market tax credits, and a state of Illinois grant will provide the balance of the project sources. M-Hub will commence construction in early 2023, with completion expected by end of year 2023. This is a rendering of the building exterior once refurbished. An example of space in the interior. If approved, the city will provide MHUB with a lump sum reimbursement after completion of the work and certification that they have complied with the city's construction requirements, including MBE and WBE participation. The city's investment will be protected by provisions in the RDA that require MHUB to occupy the location for a term of no less than 20 years. Should MHUB cease operations or sell the building during the term, they're obligated to reimburse the city for any TIP funds previously expended. Overall, DPD is in support of the use of TIF for the relocation and expansion of MHUB. We believe that it can act as a catalyst for a key economic sector that has previously been identified a city priority. Additionally, MHUB has a proven track record of success, including supporting minority entrepreneurs. For all those reasons, DPD would request your favorable consideration of this item. Thank you. And I'm willing to take any questions.
Great, thank you so much. Alderman Burnett has previously provided his support. And so at this point, I'm going to turn to the commissioners to ask if you have any questions for the department. And I see that Secretary Wheat has his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got a few questions. I'll try not to ask them all at once. Maybe starting with the last slide. So as part of the RDA, if the building is sold or MHUB dissolves, then they're on the hook for the TIF funding. But to the extent I understand, like MHUB is a nonprofit, correct? So I guess what does the city go after then? There's no bankruptcy per se, right? If MHUB dissolves, and so I guess my concern. I mean, MHUB's been around for a while with a significant, with significant institutional investors. So I appreciate that. I don't think this is like a fly-by-night thing.
Right.
But I am trying to understand kind of the protections that the city is establishing here around a pretty valuable piece of property in an area that seems to be improving quickly.
Correct. So this is Terrence Johnson, Department of Planning and Development. Your last comment, I think, hits it on the head in terms of if for any reason that they cease to operate or move out of the building, the value that's still left in the building, we've got a seat at the table in terms of reimbursement on that piece. So it's more of the value in the building.
Okay, and then I'll ask one more question, then I will get back in the queue because I know Commissioner Thomas and others have questions. I guess I'm trying to understand the 16 million, right? So the city via TIF is putting a considerable portion, if not the primary provider of the stack. And although MHUB is a nonprofit, they both have sponsors and supporters, which make up a bevy of corporates within the Chicagoland region. And to the extent I understand it, they also take in, they have the ability at least to take in some revenues from other entities as well, folks who are using or leasing the lab space or whatnot. And I don't know if it's an official part of MHUB, but they have a venture fund that is at least related to MHUB. That might sit as its own private entity or an LLC, which sits outside of MHUB, so they may not. But I guess, why does MHUB need 16.5 million?
So again, Terrence Johnson, Department of Planning and Development. I'll answer it, and then I'll kick it to Haven or Manas if they want to add anything additional. Just from a city point of view, in terms of what MHUB is, in terms of a accelerator incubator put in place to further one of the sectors that the city is really identified as honestly a sector that's critical to us recovering from the pandemic items. 37.5% in terms of the total project cost on this is it's actually less than some of the other not-for-profit projects that we've done in terms of percentage on the basis of that. But it's more about the use and the direct and indirect benefits that are provided to the city, which is why we're suggesting it. And Haven, on some of those other, would you like to make any comments?
Yeah. So this is Manas Mahendru, COO of mHub. I'll speak a little bit to the capital stack portion. From most of our revenue sources do come from mHub members and those using the space. It largely goes to invest in programs to support the acceleration of businesses, to create jobs in the manufacturing economy. And so those corporate partners largely are investing in programs to support, and more recently, subsidizing the costs for underrepresented founders. With a goal again to kind of have an economic impact. I'll defer to Haven to speak a little bit about the investment fund that is wholly owned by the nonprofit.
Thanks, Manas.
I'm sorry, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sorry, my name is Haven Allen, and I'm CEO of mHub. And just to respond directly to Secretary Wheat's conversation, we do have a venture fund, and that fund is used to make first investments in early stage startup companies, and also used to attract teams to the region. So, over 2/3 of the investments we've made have come from out of state. Over 50% of our portfolio have founders of color on the teams. And overall, when you look at underrepresented, the fund itself is investing at 6.5 times the national average on underrepresented founders. The profits generated from that, from a carried interest, are donated back up to the nonprofit to further seed and resource the organization. So it's a venture fund, but it's an impact fund focused on driving and furthering the impact of the organization.
Secretary Wheat.
I know Commissioner Thomas and others have questions, so I will hop to the back of the line.
Commissioner Thomas.
Madam Chairman, I think Secretary Wheat should continue with his questions because he's hitting some of my issues.
Okay. So I guess I understand and appreciate both the lack of venture funding for BIPOC communities and kind of the emphasis there. I guess I'm trying to understand. So maybe here's another way of putting the question. So you currently have a facility on Chicago Avenue. And so then what becomes incremental with the move? So I guess let's maybe start there, right? Like what essentially is new? I know it's obviously a much larger space, but kind of what else happens because you're moving over to Ashland?
Yeah, I think, primary.
I'm sorry, this is a public hearing and it's virtual, so can you please introduce yourself before you speak? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair Butler. My name is Haven Allen, CEO of mHub again. We have been in our location for approximately 7 years, and we were a subleasee of Motorola. So when Motorola was purchased by Lenovo decided to shut down this location and move those jobs outside of Chicago and generally outside the US. We came in, signed a sublease, and very likely could stay here, but our current landlord has drastically increased the rents and will provide us with a very short-term lease with non-market terms. So we're essentially need to find a home. So the first thing that happens is mHub exists after the later part of this year, because otherwise we would have no home, right? What we're able to also invest in is further expanding out the lab spaces to support more climate energy related startups, to support further in the scale up. So not only when teams are coming from ideation, but scaling up and that sort of precarious moment where they're starting to deliver product, help us support those teams, and then provide a similar space for these teams to grow as they're at their earliest stages. So there will be an extension of resources. There is an extension of programs. But existentially, mHub will continue to be an economic development engine for the Chicago region.
Secretary Wheat, and additional questions or comments?
I got one more and then I'll be quiet for a little bit. There's a lot of talk. There are a few lines in the documents provided in the pre-read around the kind of clean energy work of MHub. And one thing that was confusing to me was when it refers to green technologies, to use a crude term, is the proposal talking about green technologies that MHub is supporting, or is it talking about green technologies in the building? The reason I ask that is that the building is complying under environmental benefits, it's compliant with the sustainable development policy, which is fine, and it's a good policy, but it's also designed purposely to serve as a baseline to just improve the overall built environment of Chicago. And so I'm trying to understand, like, what's getting greener, essentially. Is it the economy at large, or is it the building? Because the document kind of speaks both ways. And maybe this is a question for staff specifically first, and then the representatives from MHub can speak.
So this is Terrence Joss with DPD as well, and I'll attempt to answer that question, and then again turn it over to Manas or Haven. But in the staff report that you got, you're absolutely right. The sustainability requirements are a baseline, and we are speaking to that as it relates to the actual building. But I think in terms of Manas and Haven can answer more, but a good chunk, well, a portion of the budget is going to make the building either meet or exceed the sustainability requirements that are required in the RDA. Manas or Haven, do you want to provide any additional detail on that?
Manas, maybe you can touch upon the building. I can talk about our startup and broader economic development.
And can I
activities.
just remind each of you before you speak to, for the record, introduce yourself.
This is Manas Mahendru, COO of MHub. So, the answer to the question is both. I think fundamentally to our core, we drive innovation. Clean technologies is a big portion of that. To do that effectively, the building will need to have labs that support battery innovation, labs that support energy and clean energy innovation. And so it will do that, and these funds will go to support that. And to do that well, we will need to be a test bed for these technologies, and also highlight the opportunities and the impacts of these technologies. And so the building itself will be outfitted with certainly EV chargers, an improved building envelope, and other real clean energy solutions. But the main focus of our business, and the largest focus of our business, is ensuring that we've got the resources to enable further developments and encourage further adoption into the manufacturing sector. And Haven can talk about some of the teams that we've currently have working on this space.
Sure. Haven Allen, CEO of MHub. Happy to talk either programmatically or specific case studies, but as Manas pointed to, we do have a strategic focus in supporting early stage startups developing climate and energy technologies. And we do that either through the commercialization of new technologies or the development of new intellectual property in partnership with industry, again, to advance things around long energy storage, sustainable building technologies, doing predictive maintenance, and so forth. And, some case studies that I can point to right now, we're supporting a startup that spun out of Argonne National Labs that uses a water and a saline solution passed through a vacuum tube to create refrigeration. This is similar technology that would be leveraged on the space station, but we're working to develop it so that it can be incorporated into refrigerators anywhere, whether you're at your store or at your home, to reduce the demand of electricity. So this is a non-electrical use refrigeration technology.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No other questions at this time.
Great, thank you, Secretary Weed. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to go back to the capital stack and talk about the grant from the state. First, is that grant been appropriated? Was it in the 2023 budget that passed earlier this year? Or is it a future grant amount?
Yeah, I can speak to this. This is Manas Mahendru, COO of MHub. This is in the current budget is a capital grant. It is a larger grant than the amount stated, but it is part of a bigger clean energy coalition that MHub is leading that includes Southern Illinois, Carbondale, Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, University of Chicago, Greater Englewood Chamber of Commerce, as well as a few other partners. And the allocation identified is to focus in on clean energy technology enablement through MHub's activities.
Have you received that grant?
It has been allocated. We are going through the process right now to call down those funds.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Any additional questions or comments?
This is Commissioner
Yeah,
Cox.
no, Commissioner Cox, I see you have your hand raised. Just want to make sure, since Commissioner Thomas was patiently waiting, that we address all of her questions.
And that is the reason why I wanted Secretary Weed to go ahead and make his questions, because they were related to my questions.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm done.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner Cox, thank you for so patiently waiting yourself.
Not a problem. Greetings, Mr. Allen and Mr. Mahendru. I had the pleasure of going through a tour of MHub because I'd only heard at their Chicago location, and was trying because the requests for this eye-popping contribution came before me, before I actually knew what they did or had the benefit of seeing their location. And I will say, I mean, for those who are trying to understand it, I likened it to 1871, the tech hub, but for advanced manufacturing, which means you need a lot of space for these laser machines and robots and labs. And I got the pleasure of seeing some of the entrepreneurs of color working on their products. And they went from everything from a kind of new thinking of a bicycle or a skateboard lock to something that looked like a handcrafted handbag, but because of the manufacturing capacity, they can produce dozens and dozens and dozens of them at a time. It was really quite exciting to see small entrepreneurs being given access to the type of equipment that you pay dearly to have access to. And so to Terrence's point, this is a significant part of our desire to be relevant in the 21st century in light manufacturing, to put, quite frankly, Chicago, to keep it on the map. You know, the fact is it's in a very, very prestigious location. It's on the edge of the Innovation District in Fulton Market, which means that it has, the building comes at a pretty high cost, but it also is a very prestigious building and will have to be renovated to the highest level. So this is a bricks and mortar investment that we're making in the future of light manufacturing in Chicago. So it's a pretty big deal. And I'm thrilled that this group has been able to shepherd this. They've been working on this for quite a long time. And it took us quite a long time to get comfortable that they are poised for success. And so I feel really confident in that. I also think I understand, much like startups, some startups, don't reach their goals. And if in the end of this, it doesn't work, we have the capacity, the city will have access to this asset, if I understand correctly. But that's not going to happen because they're going to be an amazing success. But we do have that assurance that, that the investment we're making, there could be, in addition to the hundreds of jobs that companies that will be started as a result of this, we will get a return on the investment if this experiment proves not to meet their goals. And I want to make sure, Clarence, that is clear. I don't want to necessarily dwell on that because I'm hoping for their success, but I do want to make clear that this sizable investment, has a return for the city if it doesn't all work out.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. Secretary Wheat.
One last question, I promise I'll stop. Are there any plans on leasing any parts of the building to non-MHUB entities?
Go ahead, Manas.
This is Manas Vendru, COO of MHUB. Typically, the way our structure works is people do sign up for programs, and with that they get space. And so direct leases are not what our intention are. It's more participation within the community and within the programs within the space. So it would be wholly owned and occupied by MHUB.
Right. Maybe to ask the question a different way, are there plans to lease any space to entities that are not core or central to MHUB's mission?
No.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Commissioner Buford.
Just digging into this, the further I get, is there an appraisal on the building?
This is Terrence Johnson with Department of Planning and Development. Yes, there was an appraisal done with a value of 29.5 million.
$25.5, you said?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was 29.5, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I'm sorry, Beth McGuire for the record, 29.5.
29.5 million for the record.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Buford, additional questions or comments?
Yeah,
I see you furiously looking at your notes, but
yeah,
please take your time. We're good.
And at the end, so in terms of the entity that's acquiring it, is there a balance sheet on that entity? Is there, MHUB?
Was the balance sheet included?
Acquiring it for more than its value, right? Slightly more. You're remodeling it, furnishing it. And how does that contribute to the overall capitalization of MHUB?
So this is Terrence Johnson again with Department of Planning and Development. They're purchasing at market, and again, Manasa can go further on this. My understanding is that there were some other folks interested as well, but finding a building of this size with the floor place to do what it is that MHUB does was very difficult. So in order to make sure that they secured the building, they paid a little bit more for it in terms of the appraisal. But Manasa, I don't know if there's more to add to that.
Yes, this is Manas Vendru, COO of MHUB. Yes, that is correct. There was some other interest in the building and something that did fall through largely for a variety of reasons, but that did price it up to that level. I think when we looked at comparable properties, there are very few options that are within, I'd say 65 and 100,000 square feet that didn't require 2 to 3 to 4 times the investment in rebuilding and outfitting. The state of the building is in sufficient place and a sufficient spot that serves the needs of the MHUB community to reduce the overall cost of the project.
Commissioner Buford, additional comments or questions?
I'm just trying to figure out if this falls within the purpose of the use of TIF funds.
Would the
I mean-
department like to address that question?
I mean, Terrence, you can address that. I mean, because go ahead.
Yeah, Terrence Johnson, Department of Planning and Development. In terms of use, absolutely. I mean, it's bringing a vacant building back onto the tax rolls that's been sitting vacant for the last 4 years. So from an economic development standpoint, absolutely. It is an orange rated building, so it does contribute to the historic nature of the area. So again, we've used TIF for those purposes as well. And then, as we mentioned before, the indirect benefits in terms of the jobs and the collaboration that is expected to come out of MHUB in terms of the young small to mid-sized entrepreneurs. Those are the types of things that, as we look at the use of TIF, for us, it puts it right in a sweet spot.
It seems like you say there was several other buyers or would-be buyers at above the appraised value. It sounds like the building was about to be put into active use again, no? Was it necessary to fund this operation, the city and so forth, to fund this operation, to put that building back into use?
If I
Commissioner
might-
Cox?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Cox. If I might add, and it most likely would have been high-end condominiums. There is, so what is unique about this is that one of the key priorities for the city's economy is advanced manufacturing. And so this fits squarely into some of our stated goals on how Chicago is going to remain relevant in this sector. Yes, I suspect there would be another buyer who'd be happy to make these into luxury condominiums and erode the manufacturing history of that area. We're paying a price, for it being adjacent to one of the hottest real estate markets in the country. And so it would have been great had MHUB existed 10 years ago, so you could have got it on the cheap and been there. But the truth is, we're dealing with an appraised value, which is real, and the buyer having to come in a little bit above that to beat out those who would want it to be high-end condominiums. So again, I hope we understand the importance of this relative to kind of the economic future of manufacturing, light manufacturing in Chicago, and also understand the synergy that this particular location has with the Fulton Market Innovation District. So it's location, location, location. And believe me, before we agreed to advance this to the committee, we had them look at a half a dozen other properties far, far away from the action. And they did not make sense. So over the course of working through their financial model and their mission, I think we came to believe that this is a project that the city should be in full support. And I think, as you heard from the Alderman, Burnett, he is in full support, largely because of the demographics that they reach and the importance of what they produce for the Chicago manufacturing economy. So, but yes, I thought too, this would have made some really swanky high-end condominiums. And I think we'd all be quite disturbed by that trend, but that is by and large what's being produced in that area.
Commissioner Buford, additional comments or questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments from members of the commission? So I don't see any additional hands raised from members of the commission. I will ask members of the public who remain up as participants in this meeting, if you have any questions or comments, you have 3 minutes to speak, and please use the raise your hand function. No members of the public have indicated that they would like to participate by making comments.
That is correct, Chairman.
Okay,
Chairman.
great, thank you. And no members of the public submitted written statements prior to the meeting within the time allowed. So I will now call the item for a vote. The resolution before us recommends approval of the M-Hub redevelopment agreement in the Kinsey Industrial Corridor TIF redevelopment project area, Ward 27. And to request authority for the Department of Planning and Development to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with M-Hub for the rehabilitation of the property located at 240 North Ashland Avenue in the Kinsey Industrial Corridor Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of M-Hub as developer. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Thomas.
Thomas seconds.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Thomas, for moving, and Commissioner Gomez for your second. Thank you so much. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom, Secretary Wheat,
Yes.
Commissioner Buford,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan McKibben, Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Griggs? Is Commissioner Griggs on mute? Kamal?
He is.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino, and Chair Butler votes yes. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there any
Thank you.
Are there any additional items?
I would like to bring up a couple of things.
Okay,
So we should probably do it after adjournment though.
oh, okay.
So I didn't want everybody to jump up.
All right, so let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you for, can I have a motion to adjourn from the commission?
So moved, Curtis.
All right, thank you. So we are now officially adjourned. So
Okay.
do you want the members of the commission to remain on?
Yes.
And, okay, so then the meeting is over. So Kamal, stop recording.
Yes,
And
Chairman.
let's
Give me
just,
30 seconds.